My brain is always ticking, my brain. My brain is always ticking, my brain. My brain is always ticking, long as I am live and kicking, my brain. Cool little cluster, that's my brain. My brain is steady working, my brain. My brain is steady working, my brain. My brain is always working, long as you keep that coffee perking, my brain. Cool little cluster, that's my brain.
Thank you so much for coming. We wish that this lecture room was this populated towards the end of the semester. It doesn't happen. This is fantastic. We've never had this many people, and we apologize that we had to ask some of the parents who will be hearing me and some of the grandparents who will be hearing me 30 seconds from now upstairs to stay upstairs, but hopefully they can get a good experience. As you can see, it's pretty packed, and we really wanted to make sure that all the students who came today could be here. And I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Mark Schmidt, and I'm the co-director of the Neuroscience program at Penn. And I have been at Penn for about, scary to think about, like 22 years. And I've been director of the program for about 10 years, and I co-directed with Dr. Laurie Flanagan-Cato. And what I wanted to tell you to start out with by just telling you that believe it or not, graduation ceremonies are actually painful. And when I say that, you might think, oh, right, he's talking about it's emotionally painful. And yes, to some degree, actually to a large degree, it is emotionally painful. I have daughters about the same age as you guys, the graduating seniors. And so, you know, as a parent, it's always hard to see your kid leave to go to college or move on or move away from your home. And so I'm excited for the graduating seniors for all you've accomplished, but I'm also sad. And I have to say, we had a little meeting at our lab a week ago where we had 2 graduating seniors, and literally everybody in the lab was teary-eyed just talking about the accomplishments of all the different seniors in the lab and just seeing the amazing growth that they had from sort of bumbling freshmen coming into the lab, having either, it's interesting, overconfident or a complete lack of confidence, and then seeing all that kind of balance out. And in the end, having seniors that are walking around the lab and everybody's looking up to them and saying, oh my God, I don't know how I could ever be like Elena or Mikhail. And so they don't realize that, but as seniors, you're now looked up by the other students. So that's the emotional pain, and that's true. But there's actually true physical pain with graduation. On Sunday, tomorrow, I will be standing and shaking the hand of every single graduating senior. And there's 43 muscles that control smile, but the main muscle is the zygomaticus major. It hooks up to the zygomatic arch. And under normal conditions, you kind of smile a little bit. Here, you have to smile continuously for 30 minutes. Because the seniors are so amazing, you have to smile, but you eventually do end up cramping up. And it is actually painful. It's pretty funny. So I'm really especially proud of the class of 2022. You guys are an amazing bunch, and you have accomplished so much. But remember when you first started, I think it's the fall of 2018, you graduated from high school and you were very excited about a normal college experience. You showed up as freshmen and you assumed, okay, freshman year is kind of weird, but I have sophomore year. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start applying for labs. And then I'm going to start my research career. A lot of you are interested in research, at least getting a research experience in college, even though that's maybe not what you want to do for the rest of your life. And then, of course, sophomore year comes, and then all the labs are shut down for what you think is maybe, oh, it's just the last 3 weeks of my second year in college, but in fact, it lasts forever. And then you never actually are able to go into the lab. And then you also imagine that you're young and you're in your 20s, and what are you supposed to do in your 20s? You're supposed to explore the world intellectually, explore the world in general, and meet new people, like kind of go away from your high school friends. And so all of a sudden, freshman year, you finish your year, and then you start your second year, and then you feel like you're becoming an adult, and then you go home, and then you're treated like a 13-year-old. And it's like, Emily, you have to make your bed. Maddie, your clothes are all over the floor. Please clean up after yourself. We did it with our kids. It drove them absolutely nuts. I'm sure it happened to all of you. And as parents, we cannot help. It doesn't matter how bright you are, how accomplished you are. When you come back home, you're 14 years old again. And so that is really tough. You were also hoping to meet your professors. And maybe you had this idea you would establish some sort of intellectual relationship with your professor, go out for coffee and talk about deep things. And then you found yourself on Zoom with everybody else having their camera off, probably including yours, listening to the professor, most likely multitasking. I won't ask what else you did, and saying, these are recorded, I'll just watch these videos later. And you never got a chance to meet your professors in person. And so that is really tough. And I think that if I look at your accomplishments, you've accomplished as much as previous years, but you've also, unequal to any other year, you have a level of resilience because of what you had to go through that is unparalleled. And it will serve you well throughout your whole life. You have learned how to pivot and how to take situations that were not ideal and actually figure out how to take the path that actually works. And although you don't realize it, you've learned so much in your 4 years. And I think as instructors and as lab heads, we see that when we compare how you came in as first years and how you are leaving as seniors. You have learned a ton of material. You've also learned how to think independently. And yes, you probably remember the days when Dr. Kaplan or I showed some sort of current voltage plot for some weird channel called KIR 4.1. And we said this is an inward rectifying channel. And what is inward? Why is it not outward? And yet, at the end of the class, you figured it out. You also finally understood, even though honestly, and I'll just whisper so that Mike Kaplan doesn't hear, I still don't get it, why you need to take into consideration the sodium potassium ATPase when measuring resting potential, and from that deriving driving force. That's still something, it's like that 2/3 type of thing in the equation. Sometimes you use it, sometimes you don't. You mastered that, and I'm sure at the beginning of your freshman year, if someone had thrown that at you, you would have had no idea. And for me, I guess, at the end of the class, I presented a paper which was the basis for the Nobel Prize, and it was full of plots that I think at even the beginning of your senior year, you would have had no idea how to interpret them. And yet I saw a lot of eyes in class kind of like go like, oh my God, I actually understand this. This is like a seminal Nature paper and I get it. So it's amazing how much you've learned. Other thing that is amazing about Penn students, and honestly, as instructors, we have no idea how you do it, is you're incredibly good at multitasking. And in the beginning, it's a little bit overwhelming. They say, Dr. Kaplan, I really would like to do a triple major, and I'm thinking about doing 2 minors as well. And then Dr. Kaplan says, I think that's too much, maybe focus on 1 major. But then what you guys do is you do 1 major, but then you're involved in like a million different clubs, or sports activities, or political outreach, or outreach in West Philadelphia to help kids learn how to read, or you're involved in music. And we have so many examples, and let me just give 2. We had 1 student in my class who was on the field hockey national team, and she had to contact me to say, you know, Dr. Schmidt, I have to go to South Africa with the national team. Could we rearrange my exam schedule? I have another student who was working in the lab, and he was really focused on his academics, but what he was most worried about is there's a bassoon solo at the beginning of Stravinsky Le Sacre du Printemps, and it's about 4 minutes long, and the single smallest mistake will be noticeable by the entire crowd. That's what he was most worried about, and not so much his grades or his work in the lab. And so you guys are somehow able to juggle all of this, and we have no idea how you do it, but somehow you do, and you are here, and you're incredibly accomplished. And I have to say that I am so incredibly proud of you. And throughout this process, you slept much less than you needed to sleep. You probably didn't eat as well as you should have. And so it's good that your parents did not know about that. But it's amazing what you've accomplished. And I would say we see that because we recruit a lot of the undergrads, the top undergrads, to be teaching assistants for our classes. And this is maybe not even a kept secret, Mike, that the undergrads from the neuroscience program are better than the graduate student TAs, for sure. Except if the grads, the only exception being the grad students who are actually undergrads with us as well. One of the things that we pride ourselves as part of the neuroscience major is to allow all the students to get exposed in a maximal way to research. And of course, Penn is a wonderful place to do that because we have so many labs. There are about 300 labs at Penn that actually do neuroscience. I would say probably 150 of them are actually actively working with undergrads. And so our undergrads have unbelievable amounts of choices to work in laboratories. Some of them end up working the entire 4 years. Some of them just try it for 1 semester. But it's a wonderful opportunity to actually get engaged and know what research is about, and to kind of give you a sense of the range of the types of projects. So for example, there's a student who was studying the neural bases for reading. So brains have evolved for speech, but we have not evolved to read. So how does the brain actually is able to, co-opt this new skill to read and extract that information? And so, the student was involved in brain imaging, in infants, looking at different areas of the brain, like the cerebellum, and looking to try to explain reading levels with sort of brain mechanisms. There was one student in our graduating class who pretty much single-handedly went to her advisor and said, I'm really interested in trying to develop a model for anorexia nervosa. And she basically convinced her mentor that this was a really good question because he was studying neural mechanisms of appetite control, and single-handedly created a new model using really modern genetic techniques to measure the dynamics of dopamine in this area known as nucleus accumbens, which is important in reward-based processing and action selection. And so this is amazing research that these undergrads are doing. And then the third one I just want to highlight, the range is there are also students, a number of them studying the neural circuits in using genetics in fruit flies, melanogaster fruit flies, and looking at how these neural circuits control sleep. Yes, fruit flies do sleep, and the amount of sleep that they have in early larval stages actually has a profound effect on neural development. So, and again, I could go on and on and on with the amazing range of projects from computational neuroscience all the way to molecular genetics that our students have accomplished. But what the most important thing is not so much what you do in terms of research, but the types of skills that you get when working in a research lab. So you figure out how to tackle a problem. A lot of students will come and have these grandiose ideas. I want to work in a lab and I want to sort of solve the world. And then you learn that you can't do that. And you have to break it down into smaller steps. And you learn the discipline of how to do the experiments right. Yes, sometimes adding a solution that has one type of molarity is going to be very important, because if you double that molarity, it's going to mess everything up. You shouldn't let your slides dry, for example. All these small technical things, you learn how to do that in a methodical way, and you learn the discipline, and you learn that in order to get big answers, you have to sort of approach them in sort of incremental ways. And ultimately is about perseverance. And these are skills that are going to be valuable to you, whether you're a researcher or not. And the best example that I found is we had a a BBB major. So the neuroscience major used to call the biological basis of behavior, and he graduated in 2000, so about 22 years ago. He is now a very, very well-respected businessman, and he looks back at his experience working in the laboratory as fundamental to his success. And all the skills that he learned working in the laboratory, he's applying still to this date to running a very successful biotechnology company. And so again, these skills are really going to help you throughout your life. And the one thing that I want to really highlight for your class is that, remember, you came in, you wanted to work in the lab, and you couldn't because the labs were closed. And we assumed as instructors that we would get proposals and $3.99, $4.99 projects that were just not very good because the labs were closed. It turns out we could not have been further from the truth. Students somehow figured out, they were very resourceful, and they pivoted and they talked to their mentors and figured out how to do projects that did not require working in the lab. So a lot of students had learned how to program just so that they could do their projects. And they took huge data sets and started analyzing them and actually created the intellectual framework that allowed them, when they went back to the lab, to actually do some really interesting experiments. And so I just want to finish by saying, you know, this whole process that you're going through now does not end, you know, on Monday after commencement. Life is a continuous learning process. And what hopefully we taught you, and sometimes it was in ways that did not seem so clear with some of the sort of obscure questions we were asking you in our different classes, is learning how to learn, being inquisitive, how to approach problems, and hopefully learn how to love the learning process. And I looked at my notes from a few years ago, and so, but this is still completely true. There's a person named Mahathir Mohamad, who was the Prime Minister of Malaysia. He was Prime Minister for many years, and then he was re-elected at the age of 92. He's still alive. And so the learning process keeps going and keeps going. And we know we need you, these really bright, curious, resourceful students in this world that is constantly changing and constantly in potential upheaval. We need your talent to really start not just going back to where we were before, but making this a better world. So the last thing I want to say is I would like to have all the graduating seniors stand up. And please stand up, graduating seniors. And I would like to make, wow, this is amazing how many we have. I'd like to make everybody in the audience and upstairs 30 seconds from now, I want to give a huge round of applause for everything that you did. And as you know, you would not be here without the amazing support network. Mom and dad, siblings, grandparents, extended family. So I would like all those upstairs that are extended family and all those in this room that are extended family to please stand up and have the students congratulate you. It's been a huge, huge So what we're going to do now is I'm going to introduce my co-director, Dr. Flanagan Cato, and she's going to come with me. And we're going to read the names of all the students that received honors in the neuroscience major. And the honors is based on both a GPA cutoff, as well as at least 2 semesters of work in a thesis lab and the writing of a thesis proposal. And do you want me to announce this? Do you want me to announce
I'm going to put it on the board.
Okay, okay. And so Mike in the background is going to write the link for the YouTube if some of you want to actually stream that on your phone. So Dr. Flanagan Cato is a professor in the psychology department, and she's also a neuroscientist focusing on neuroendocrinology, and most recently has taken a huge interest in neuroscience education in a lot of the local schools in West Philadelphia and those that are less privileged. And it's been a complete honor to have Lori join, I think she joined about 5 years ago, the neuroscience program. And unfortunately, Dr. Jen Heerding, who was supposed to also read the names, fell ill this morning, not COVID, but I think she has a bad flu. She's our associate director. And as all of you know, she's absolutely amazing. And without Dr. Heerding, I don't think we would have the program we do have. Dr. Cato?
So as we call the names of the honors students, if you could each come forward, and if the audience could hold their applause till the end, and we'll have a group picture of all the honors thesis students.
You want to start?
Okay, sure. Anushree Aneja.
Bergen Brabrovitz.
Bima Watang.
Jillian Broom.
Serena Chen.
Diana Chernoff.
Sarah Chowdhury.
Helen Downs.
Natalie Edmond.
Siani Ellis.
Harrison Fellheimer.
Margot Games.
Mikhail Habib.
Ali Hamandi.
Nicole Horio.
Farhan Jivraj.
Janae Johnson.
Emily Kopp.
Kayla Kruger.
Namrita Kumar.
Alicia Kunwar.
Isabella Lamadrid.
Theodore Lenz.
Sarah Materasso.
Marissa Mohena.
Lauren Noyen.
Ellen O'Callaghan.
Emily Orengo.
Alexander Palma.
Diego Quirarte.
Maya Rajan.
Dana Raphael.
Rose Rosti.
Mariana Restrepo.
Anjara Rodriguez.
Lana Solum. Sophie Seamsglus.
Robert Sierra.
Jackie Tang. Come on, Kaplan. Are you next?
Deepti Tandri.
Kelsey Walsh.
Jonathan Webster.
Stephen Wren.
Irene Yi.
And now last but not least, and then a big round of applause, Lillian Zhang. Wait, what happened? Oh, no. We're missing a few. We're really sorry. Max Reagan. Congratulations, Max. And then, sorry, who else? And Rachel Malari.
Mike.
Yeah, I know like one of these was there because we checked every single name. It could be stuck to somebody else's. Could you make an announcement? Check, you know, stuck?
Okay. Probably,
We know that
it's probably Mikhail. Mikhail was right before him.
Should I just go stay?
Do you want to check with him? Just. I'm pleased to introduce our next presenter. He's been a stellar member of our team for something like 20 years. He co-teaches one of our core courses, as all the students know, cellular molecular neurobiology, and several of our extremely popular electives, including synaptic physiology and music and the brain. For me, as co-director of the program, it's a blessing to work with someone who loves teaching so much, but also does lots of random things for making our major better, like snapping a photo of our honors students. He's fun to work with, and as our students understandably know, his combination of energy and rigorous expectations, and dare I say maybe quirkiness, are great for the program. Dr. Michael Kaplan.
Oh, thanks, you guys. And after all the things I've done to you, really, that's very nice. Thank you, and thanks for that introduction, Lori. I want to say a little shout out to our teaching assistants that Mark mentioned already. But you know, our undergraduate teaching assistants have been, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Indispensable. It's just been indispensable, you know, for us to do the best job that we can in teaching these courses. And, you know, as Mark was saying, we've over the years, you know, originally we used to use only graduate students, and Penn graduate students are excellent. I know, I was one. They're very, very good. But, you know, they're teaching a course that they didn't take, right? They took it in another form, and they have to sort of translate and sort of, you know, learn the way we're talking about things. So over time, we started increasingly relying on undergraduates, you know, usually just to fill the gaps. And what we sort of found is they are at least as good and sometimes better than our graduate students, partially because, you know, they're in the same place as the people they're teaching, you know, they know what you need, and because they've, in most cases, just taken the course that they're now helping you to understand. So I wanted to just mention some of them by name here. First, TAs for 109, we have Evan Rosario, Bergen Babrowitz, and Cameron Koza. Liana Alcaro and Alan Zhang for 160 with Lori. Annie Liu with Judy. Is that your neuroanatomy? Neuroethology. Anushri Aneha for 216 with Jen Heerding. Mikhail Habib and Kayla Kruger for drugs, brain and mind, 270. And I want to say a special shout out to the TAs who helped us with BBB 251, which, as you may have, you know, may have heard, 251 is, you know, not an easy course, right? Not an easy course. And it is also not an easy course to TA. You know, those of you who have taken 251, which is all of you, because it's required, you know that it's hard. Now, imagine doing what you did in 251 at the board in front of a group of 20 possibly angry undergraduates who are just like, you know, looking for you to make a mistake. It's a kind of a scary thing to do. And I really want to thank our our TAs who did that. And this year we had Danny Kutsovsky, Jillian Broom, and Millie Huang, who you're going to hear more about in a little while. And I also want to mention we had two returning champions. We had Amanda Moreno and Christina Miranda, who were graduating seniors from last year. Amanda TA'd for us last year and came back to do it again. And Christina, I know, has TA'd BBB 109 a number of times. And they're both very good. And again, this was one of our best TA crews we ever had this year. We really loved our TAs this year. We have Jillian, Millie, Amanda, Christina. That's Katie Copley, who is a grad student. She actually won the Dean's Award for Distinguished Teaching by a graduate student. She was excellent TA. And Danny Kutsovsky. What? Oh, yeah. All right. That's just some guy who wandered in off the street. Danny couldn't make it that night. We kicked him out. Anyway, let me say again, thank you to my 251 TAs. We couldn't have done it without you, or let's just say we would have done it a lot worse. All right. So thanks again. I'd like to introduce our next presenter, Mike Kaplan, who was already been introduced, so I won't. I'm going to present the Pew Award next. This is named after Ed Pugh, who was one of the original founders of our department. And this is an award given for academic excellence. Now, that's a phrase, what does that mean? Academic excellence. And I looked up on the website to see if I could get a little help, putting together my remarks for this morning. And they didn't really tell us what academic excellence is. I mean, obviously you want good grades, but what is academic excellence? Well, I think the best way to describe academic excellence is to tell you about our two winners this year, Theo Lenz and Millie Huang. All right, I know both these guys pretty well, and I can say these are two of my favorite students of the last, maybe decade or so. And I think what both of these two show us about academic excellence is just how much more there is to academic excellence than getting good grades, right? Because they both have an uninterrupted wall of A's and A pluses on their transcripts, but a fair number of you actually do manage to do that, and that's pretty impressive. What I think is additionally impressive about both of these two is how much more they did besides just getting good grades, and how much they remind us that Penn is not just a pretty good place to launch your applications to med school. How much more there is to being a science student at Penn than making sure you get into a good med school. Theo was captain of the varsity lacrosse team, which is a very time-consuming thing, even in a pandemic year where a lot of things are canceled. And he managed to keep up a 4.0 average even while he was doing that, which is very impressive. He also was very involved in research. He did some research involving, I didn't fully understand it. It was a little outside of my wheelhouse. It was kind of social contexts and effects of social context on anxiety. Is that more or less, right? Work which was very well received. He presented it at the BBB Symposium, and it's going to be presented at the American Psychological Society next month. Millie Huang. Where do I start with Millie? Let me tell you a fun fact about Millie. Millie was one of 5 intrepid sophomores who took 251 in 2019. 3 of them did not make it, I'm sorry to report. One of them finished with a B, and I was very impressed. And then there was Millie. Millie was 8th in the class as a sophomore in a sea of sharks, in a sea of very competitive seniors, mostly seniors, a large fraction of them pre-med. This is a very competitive group. And Millie shows up as a sophomore, as 8th in the class, right? She wrote to me that year and asked about TA. And I was impressed, but I said, no, you can't TA as a junior. I mean, the seniors are not going to take to being bossed around by juniors. It's not going to work, right? I said, but come back the next year. And I figured she'd probably have something better to do by the next year. But I was very happy when she did come back the next year and went on to be one of our best TAs ever. Millie is very interesting. Millie, besides being a neuroscience major, also did a minor in classical studies. And she can talk your ear off about ancient Greece and about interesting things about, apparently the story about ancient worlds and their interactions with each other is a bit messier than many of us were taught. Anyway, talk to Millie about that sometime. It's a real treat. Anyway, I just want to say, congratulations to both of our winners this year. And it's been a real privilege and a treat to work with both of them. And come on up if you're here. Are you here? Come on up here. Here. Come on, Billy, come on up here. Here. All right, Flu Hardy Award. Who's presenting the Flu Hardy? Mike. I'm introducing Mike. Mike Kane is one of the relatively newer members of our group. When before Mike Kane got here, I used to sometimes win the most popular professor award. And then after Mike Kane got here, it was all Mike Kane, Mike Kane. Oh, Mike Kane. Have you seen Mike Kane's class? It's so great. Oh, Mike Kane this, Mike Kane that. No, really, I'm kidding. Of course, we love Mike Kane. He's been a great addition to our group. He's one of our anchoring teachers of BBB 109, you know, our important entry course to the major. He teaches a demanding section of that every year. He also teaches a couple of other courses, the very, very popular 270, Drugs, Brain, and Mind. And what's your new course, your lab course called? And his new Lab of Animal Behavior, I know some of you took that course. That looks like a very cool course. I'm planning on impersonating an undergraduate and trying to take it myself. It's not going to fly. Anyway, Mike Kane.
All right, thank you, Mike, for that introduction. Welcome, everybody. My name is Michael Kane, as Dr. Kaplan introduced me. It's my pleasure now to give out the Flu Hardy Award. So the Flu Hardy Award was an award established in 2006, and the award is given to the student with the most outstanding poster presentation, during the undergraduate neuroscience research symposium. The award is named after former director of the program, Dr. Stephen Fluharty, who held the position for about 11 years in the mid-90s to the early 2000s. Dr. Fluharty is actually the Dean of Arts and Sciences right now and is one of the persons that you get random emails from all the time talking about Penn issues that you probably never read. Dr. Fluharty is actually also the creator and namer of the course Drugs, Brain, and Mind, so I certainly owe him a debt of gratitude. But this year's a winner. It's certainly a pleasure to introduce this year's winner, Anushree Aneja. Anushree was actually one of my pre-major advisees back in the summer of 2018, back when my hair was actually short. And it's been a pleasure to watch her grow intellectually and personally throughout this time. So Anushree worked in the lab of Yan-Kwan Song, who's going to come up here in a minute to say some words. The title of her proposal, or her poster, was Modeling Autism Spectrum Disorder in Drosophila melanogaster. So Anushree, please come up here and accept your award. So now I'm going to invite to the podium here, Dr. Yan-Kwan Song, Anushree's thesis advisor, for some kind words.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yan-Kwan Song, and I'm faculty in the Department of Pathology at Upenn. And well, it's very nervous for me to be here. And I think this is probably the first ever ceremony of this kind that I've been to as a faculty. So it's a strange experience on the other side. So today we'll be talking about Anushree, and then I think in general I'm very proud of her achievement, and she worked really, really hard to get here, and then she totally deserves it. And I'll just briefly mention 3 examples that I've seen during her work in the lab that fully reflects of her characteristics. The first of which is when she started in the lab, which probably 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. And then we decided to do something virtual. And then so my lab works on flies and neurodevelopment, and then Anushree's interested in doing some neurodevelopmental disorders and autism in particular. So we decided to do something to for her to summarize what has been done in the field in flies in particular that works on autism-related disorders. And I was merely expecting maybe just a very brief presentation with a few slides and then list some papers in the field and then just talk about the assays that have been done. But what I got is far more from that, which is a full presentation of 20, 30 slides, and then in which she listed all the major papers in the field and all the assays, major assays have been done, and how the assays were performed, what are the pros and cons for each assay, and which was the really established a very solid background for base of her work eventually in the lab. So this fully speaks to her passion and attention to details and thoroughness of whatever she does. And second thing that I like to mention in particular is I think most of you have seen her poster presentation during symposium, and in which she presented one bar graph of fly behavior, which is social spacing assay that she did. And from this bar graph, and there are only 3-4 bars altogether, but I'd like to mention that this was far from that. So to do this, the assay was we put in a triangle shape as arena about 40 flies. And then we wait for the flies to settle down, and eventually we see how clustered or separate the flies are. And then when the assay was initially introduced by other labs, they were the only thing measured was the distance between the nearest 2 flies. And then there's a plugin for that, and it can do that readily within a couple of minutes. But then when we did this, and we found that there wasn't a very strong phenotype, but we had a very strong impression that there's actually a phenotype in the way the flies cluster together. So we decided to do was to, instead of doing the nearest 2 flies, but we did measure the distance between every flight with all the rest of flies. And then so end up about 800 measurements that she has to do for this in just one assay. And then she was totally up for it. And then I wasn't sure that could be done, but she made it. And then eventually we had to do replicates for each assay, and altogether 12 genotypes. So it's altogether 10,000 data points. She has to manually measure and then quantify and present in this very simple bar graph. So she really deserved the prize, given all the effort she put into that. And a third example is towards the end of her work in the lab a month ago, where she told me that the day when she's going to officially leave the lab. I was really sad, but then I'm happy that she can move on. And then we want to finish the experiments with something that we designed, which can be done in a month or so. But as you can imagine, things never happen the way it's supposed to be, and the flies never cooperate enough to do the things that you want them to do. And then 2 weeks later, and then we found that the flies simply not producing at all. And then so the plan changed a little bit, and she continues to, she wants to finish things in a reasonable time frame, and then she'd set up another assay to do more flies, hopefully. And then maybe 2-3 days before the end date, and the flies still they're not in the flies yet. And then so usually offered to continue to work in the lab after the official date, and then she actually probably still doing analysis right now, or maybe not right now, but probably today. And then so this fully reflects her responsibility, and then she wants to get things done. She wants to see the end of things completed in a manner that she's satisfied with. So with all of these together, I'm sure she will be very successful in whatever career or challenge that she takes up, and then I look forward to her success in the near future. And another thing I want to say is I have really enjoyed the privilege of getting students from this program. I have a student previously, a couple of years ago, Gina John, who also got the Elliott Stella Award, and then now Anusha got this Foolhardy Award. Very proud of it. And then I have another student coming now, is finish up his sophomore year. So I hope to keep getting more bright, brilliant students from the program, and really look forward to mentoring them and see them grow. And thank you all.
Stand in front of the backdrop. But marvelous, marvelous. Good.
All right, moving on with some more awards here. I'm first going to introduce my colleague, Dr. Judith McLean. Many of you have taken courses with Dr. McLean. She teaches several courses within our program. including the Introductory to Neuroscience, BBB 109, Neuroethology, BBB 233, as well as the Neuroanatomy Lab, BBB 310. I can say with absolute certainty that Dr. McLean has been at Penn longer than anybody in this room. As she just mentioned to me, she's been here since she was 18 years old. She's actually part of the second graduating class of this very program. I won't tell you when that was, but you can look it up. And Dr. McLean is here to introduce the winner of the Stellar Award. Dr. McLean, thank you.
Okay, yes, I've been here since I was 18. I love it here. The Elliott Stellar Award was named after Dr. Elliott Stellar, who was a professor and provost of Penn, and he was also one of the founders of the discipline now known as behavioral neuroscience. He was one of the founding neuroscientists that founded the Institute of Neurological Sciences here at Penn, now known as the Mahoney Institute of Neurological Sciences. And he was involved in the creation of the biological basis of behavior program, now known as the undergraduate neuroscience program. I actually knew Elliott, that's how old I am. He was a professor in the Department of Anatomy when I was doing my PhD work here at Penn in the Department of Anatomy. And I just have to say that he was just one of the nicest men and a true gentleman. So the candidates for the Elliott Stellar Award are selected from the outstanding honors thesis presented at the Undergraduate Neuroscience Student Research Symposium. And the prize is awarded by a committee that considers the quality of the oral presentation, as well as the overall quality of the candidate's undergraduate record. This year, the award goes to Serena Chen.
Serena, I just want to take this opportunity to congratulate you on your graduation. I'm sorry I can't attend this celebration. It was a joy to have you in the lab this past year. You had such an interesting project and you did it so well. We are so excited that you're going on to become a neuroscientist and get your PhD, especially since you're going to do it at Penn. And we hope we were part of that process and that you will come back and tell us about your experiences. Congratulations again.
So as Dr. Greenspan mentioned, Serena will be joining the first year graduate group of the neuroscience graduate group here at Penn next year. So congratulations for that. The title of her honors thesis was The Role of Lysosomal Movement in Oligodendrocyte Differentiation. And her supervisors were Dr. Judith Greenspan, who we just heard from, and Dr. Kelly Jordan-Shudo, and Dr. Lindsay Festa. So congratulations, Serena, if you can come up and get your award.
Our next presenter is going to be Jillian Wong from the Penn Neuroscience Society to present the annual teaching award. All right.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jillian. I'm one of the co-presidents of the Penn Neuroscience Society, and I'm incredibly honored to be presenting this year's Neuroscience Teaching Award on the behalf of Penn Neuroscience Society. We are a recently revived undergraduate group whose goal is to bring people together across all disciplines who are united in their interest of learning more about the field of neuroscience today. This year's teaching award is going to a professor who is deeply loved by both us students and faculty. We all know him for his amazing slide transitions in Bib 251, as well as for his thorough appreciation of the RC charging curve. He's an exceptional teacher with a long list of virtues that I could go on about, but to put it most simply, he is a person who I think has impacted many of us here in the best way. Please join me in congratulating this year's teaching award recipient and author of the SoundCloud smash hit, Brain in a Jar, Dr. Kaplan.
Yeah. And after I was just complaining about how I never win the teaching award anymore. You know, well, I'm at a loss for words. You know, I know it's customary when people win an award, they always go, "Oh, I wasn't expecting to win anything." And then they reach in their pocket and pull out a speech. I don't have a speech because I really was, you know, I pretty much gave up any hope of winning the teaching award when I took over the reins of 251 with Mark, right? Because, you know, 251, you parents don't know, this is considered one of the 30 hardest courses at Penn. I don't know if that's true, but apparently it feels that way. You know, and it's, you know, it's a fun course to teach. I mean, I love the material. I think it's really where we grapple with what's most different about, you know, the brain, and, you know, neuroscience is neurons. And I think everyone has to grapple with that once. But, you know, I knew it was not going to win me any popularity contests. Have any of you ever heard of Stockholm syndrome? Okay, so I don't know, there may be a little bit of that going on here, but let me just say thank you all very, very, very much. This really does mean a lot to me, and especially after, I do actually feel guilty about all the pain that I caused you guys in 251. I actually feel a lot of guilt about that, and I'm not even joking. And I know some of you are thinking, good, you deserve it. But, you know, really, I hope you do understand that, you know, all of you. First of all, let me share a secret with you. When I took the equivalent of Bio 251 as an undergraduate, I got a B-, right? Because I was like, snails? Why do I care about snails? I don't know about consciousness, and, you know, memory and stuff. I'm like, snails, squids, you know. So I sympathize with you guys who weren't quite as thrilled to be hearing about snails and things like that. And, you know, and finally, let me just say that, you know, I'm sorry the exams were so hard. But, you know, it's a challenge for me to challenge you guys. You guys are a challenging audience. And if I don't make the exams hard, you know, everybody gets a 95. And that's not something. You're probably thinking that'd be fine. But anyway, thank you all very much. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
So this concludes our ceremony, and I have to say, as a co-instructor with Mike, this is completely deserved. It's been a pleasure working with Mike, especially working on exams till sometimes 3 in the morning for me, but 6 in the morning for him. We still do that, and we wonder if we can maintain that through our late 60s, but we probably will. So anyway, really well deserved, Mike. I'm very proud of you. And one more time, I really want to say, you know, congratulations to all our graduates. I hope, we always love if you stay in touch. Every now and then we get little emails that make us very happy, sometimes a little teary-eyed, when you can let us know how you're doing. We know that you're going to do amazing. You're so talented, so bright, and so incredibly driven. And so here, one more big, huge round of applause for our graduates.
Someday we'll be together.
always ticking, my brain. My brain, it's always ticking, my brain. My brain, it's always ticking, long as I am live and kicking, my brain. Cool little cluster, that's my brain. My brain, it's steady working, my brain. My brain is steady working, my brain. My brain, it's always working, long as you keep that coffee perking, my brain. Cool little cluster, that's my brain. It's losing power, my brain. My brain, it's losing power, my brain. My brain, it's losing power, 1,200 neurons every hour, my brain. Cool little cluster, that's my brain. My brain, it's getting pounded, my brain. My brain, it's getting pounded, my brain. My brain, it's getting pounded. Pretty soon I'll be dumbfounded, my brain. Cool little cluster, that's my brain. My brain, it's a cool little cluster, that's my brain.